Hey friend, in this video, I'm going to be showing you exactly how I set up my watercolor palette. So I get asked all the time what order I put the colors in and why I put them in this specific order. And so I thought, why not show you exactly how I do it? I have a brand new palette from Sylvan Clay Works, and I've been using my Mary Blue watercolor recently, switched from Winsor Newton to my Mary Blue. And so I just chose my top 20 favorites of my Mary Blue from their 90 color range. And so I thought I would show you exactly how I'm going to set up my palette with these 20 colors. Also, thanks so much to my Mary Blue for sponsoring this video. I am absolutely obsessed with these colors and would not be working with them if it wasn't for already loving the colors. And so thank you so much for sponsoring this video. If you're ready to see how I set up my palette, then let's dive in. All right, so if you didn't already know, I recently decided to switch the brand that I use for paint. One of the main reasons was I wanted to minimize the amount of toxins that I was breathing in, and there's a lot of synthetic ingredients like blending agents in most brands. But after doing a lot of research, my Mary Blue is an Italian brand of watercolor, and they use pure pigments and then gum arabic made from sand. I made sure there's some cadmium colors, there's some phthalo colors that I really loved from my Mary Blue, but I decided not to have them in my everyday palette. I might use them here and there once in a blue moon because they're known toxins for potentially causing cancer and reproduction risks and all of that. You can Google it. So anyway, just trying to be on the safer side, but also I want to just, for the brand itself, it's way more pure. There's no binding agents and other synthetic ingredients. It's literally pure pigment plus gum arabic from a natural source. So we've got an easy way or simple way to set up your watercolor palette if you're using tubes. The reason why I like or prefer to use tubes over pans is because the pans are really small, and when I'm using big brushes, it's really hard to just grab one individual color, and it can get really messy if you're like taking out the palette or the pan from the palette. So this has a lot more space between each individual color, and I can squeeze out the exact amount that I want to use. So I went through all 90 of my Mary Blue's watercolor pigments. I did a swatch test of each of them, a value scale, so I saw how their darker values looked, the more transparent and lighter values looked. And these are the 20 colors that I selected from those 90. If you want to check out, there was a lot of colors that I really wanted to include in this palette, but I only have 20 dishes. So if you want to see what those colors are, make sure you go check out that video. Like I said, there's about 90 colors in this line, so you definitely want to check some out. This is my personal preference, or what I artistically am gravitating towards are these more vibrant colors. So if you are more neutral, there's a lot of range of colors in my Mary Blue line, so make sure you check out that video. Also, this palette is from Sylvan Clay Works. We'll link to it. Great ceramic palette. I also have a plastic travel palette that I like to use, especially for traveling, because it's easy to clean up, wipe up. But if you are using a plastic palette, like one of these circle palettes or the travel palette, they have a coating on them, plastic, that will make this like beading situation happen, which can cause some frustration. It does wear off eventually, but if it's bothering you and it's a brand new palette, all you have to do is use a glue stick and wipe a paper towel with glue stick around the whole palette. And so it's just like a thin film of glue stick on it, and it won't do that anymore. So my first color is my black in my palette. It's carbon black. It's a very nice, rich, has a slight brown undertone to it, but it's a really nice, rich black color. And then I have burnt umber, which I had burnt umber in my previous palette from Winsor & Newton, but this one is like what I wanted burnt umber to be from Winsor & Newton. It has a little bit more, it's like darker, it has a little bit more black in it, so it's not as like a chocolate brown as Winsor & Newton's burnt umber. The next color is a bit of a surprise. It's called Dragon's Blood. So one of the main reasons why I chose it was because of the name, but it's also like a really bright red brown, and it's super, super pretty. If you want to see what it looks like, go check out the video. And then we have Permanent Red Light. Gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. Pretty close to Scarlet Lake, which I used from Winsor & Newton. It's pretty much an exact match. Even the texture and consistency is similar. Love this color. And then we have Quinacridone Red. It's like a Scarlet Lake and Opera Rose had a baby color, which I would mix all of the time from my Winsor & Newton palette. So this is the blend between Scarlet Lake and Opera Rose, or Permanent Red Light, and this color, which is Primary Red Magenta, which is pretty much a match to Opera Rose from Winsor & Newton. However, this is a grade 1 permanent, so it's a fugitive color. However, Opera Rose compared to this Primary Red Magenta would get really granulated. This one, so far, I haven't seen that happen, so really great. And then we have Pyroli Orange, which is a super rich brick red orange. Gorgeous. Again, if you want to see any of these colors tested on paper, you got to check out that video where I swatched all of them. Then we have Permanent Orange. So in my previous palette I had from Winsor & Newton, I had Cadmium Orange, which I'm getting rid of all the cadmium colors in my palette moving forward because it's a known toxin. So Permanent Orange is very similar, just a little bit more red, but I love how vibrant it is. And I can add yellow to it to make it less red if I wanted. Yellow Ochre, similar to the Yellow Ochre from Winsor & Newton, a little bit thicker and less brown. It's like a more golden color. Touch of green in it. And then we have Transparent Yellow. This is awesome highlighter greenish yellow. It's wild. It's a wild color. And then we have Primary Yellow, which is a good substitute for Lemon Yellow Deep. And probably, surprisingly, my favorite color, Green Gold. Similar to Transparent Yellow, but there's more green in it. It's very unsuspecting when it's just in your palette, but on paper, it's got this really neon undertone yellow, which you have to check out in that video. Sap Green. So Sap Green from Winsor & Newton is a bit richer, like less, kind of looks like it has white. It's like a creamy gouache sap green color from my Mary Blue, which I love. This Kubrick Green Phthalo Light is awesome. It's like emerald. Similar to the emerald color I use with my watercolor inks, but it's watercolor paint. And then I have Ultramarine Light, which is similar to Cobalt. I really wanted to use the My Mary Blue Cobalt Light color, but it's Cobalt, which is a known toxin as well. So I'm getting rid of Cobalt from my palette. But Ultramarine Light is a very close second, or not second, it's a very close match to Cobalt Light. And then Primary Blue Cyan is just gorgeous. You gotta check out the video to see what it looks like. It doesn't look like that. It's like more turquoise. Cerulean Sky Blue. This is kind of similar to Macaw Feather Blue. Of course, we needed a Prussian blue, and in the swatch video, I say something quite shocking about this Prussian blue, because you guys know, if you've been following my channel for a while, that Prussian blue from Winsor & Newton was my all-time favorite color. So if you want to see how it compares, check out that video. Then this is called Faience Blue. It's kind of like an indigo. It has a little bit of black in it. And last but not least, but my least favorite color in the whole spectrum of colors, purple. You guys know my least favorite color is purple, but this is a Quinacridone Violet, so it has a lot of pink in it, which I love those purples with pink in it. More of like magenta, and so if I want it to be more traditional purple, I would just add some blue to it. There you go. All the colors of the rainbow. So I set up my palette this way. So I started with black, browns, reds, because it's in order of the rainbow. Obviously black and brown isn't really in the rainbow, but these are red undertone browns. And then I like to group browns and blacks together because it just, I don't know, just makes sense. This is a very red undertone brown, the dragon's blood. So it's next to my permanent red light. Because I do a lot of mixing with neighboring colors and I want to keep it consistent. And then also just the way color theory and color mixing works. If you're mixing opposites, a warm color and a cool color, or, you know, red and green, for example, you're going to get brown, muddy colors. So I'm going to try and keep these two dishes for warm colors, these two for cool colors. And then this is going to be kind of like whenever I need to mix up combinations of things. So just to keep it somewhat clean, we have it in the order of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And that makes the most sense to me. Also, if you don't want to, I mean, these ceramic palettes are gorgeous. They're great for the Instagram photos. I love using them, but they're like obviously not super light. They're heavy. So if you want the more traditional plastic palette, I'll link to the Traveler's palette that I also have and use all the time. In the description of this video. And again, what I said about the plastic with the glue stick, it will eventually wear off without doing the glue stick method, but you can just rub glue stick all over, rub it in with the paper towel, and you won't have the little beading issue. So I get this question a lot: how long until it's ready to paint if I'm, you know, doing my palette this way straight from the tube? You can start painting right away. It doesn't matter. You can paint watercolor straight from the tube. You can also paint when it's fully dry, and you can just reactivate it or re-wet it and it will be activated again. So if you want color to be really rich and buttery and thick, straight from the tube is easiest to get it quicker, more quickly that way. But when it's dried, you can still reactivate the color and still get it really, really thick. You just have to sit there kind of a while to absorb the pigment, to like dig around the pigment and get a lot of pigment. I just do it this way and wait for it to dry typically, because you can waste a lot of paint when it's straight from the tube. So I typically wait for it to dry so that I don't pick up too much paint while I'm working kind of quickly. But you can paint with watercolor straight from the tube and it still has all the transparent values and then obviously all the really thick values. I talked about this I talked about why I don't have white in my palette a little bit in the swatch test video. And the reason is the more water you have in the ratio of pigment and water with watercolor, the more transparent the color will be. So you keep the vibrancy or the color hue quality from the pigment, but you're just making it more transparent so it's lighter or more see-through. But when you add white to your colors, you're gonna make them more pastel, you're gonna make them more milky and creamy and the hue is gonna shift. So to keep this green a super vibrant, like emerald green, if I add white to it, it's just gonna become a more pale pastel green. So I'm gonna lighten it with more water in my mixture, in my ratio. If you struggle with this pigment and water ratio situation, or how much water is too much water, all that kind of stuff, make sure to check out my tea to butter exercise video. We'll link to it in this video. I don't usually clean my palette. This is the cleanest palette I've had in a decade, and I like it that way for the most part. However, I do see the pros to cleaning your palette. You're going to get a lot of accidental mixtures the dirtier your palette gets, so you absolutely can clean your palette. However, I do like some of those accidental mixtures, and I always know how to get the color to the right hue that I want eventually. So I pretty much keep my palette as it builds up over time dirty, and I again haven't had a clean palette in a decade, so not really, but it's totally up to personal preference. So if you're just starting with watercolor and you don't want to break the bank with all 20 of these colors, you just want to start with a select few, maybe like 6 colors, well then here's a couple different ways you could do it. You can mix all 3 primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, to make like a neutral color like brown or black, depending on the red, blue, and yellow specific hue that you choose. So you could get rid of these 3 colors with just having the primary colors. This Quina Credone red is kind of a blend between this pink and the red. So I would probably just choose the pink and the red. These are like, because I paint flowers all the time, pink and red are kind of my staples. So that's why I also have this blend. So pink and red are my staples and oranges. So it depends on what you're painting and what you gravitate toward color-wise, but definitely have all three primaries. So we have a red. For my green, I would do sap green. Shoot. Yeah, I would do sap green because this green gold is awesome, but it's like a yellow green. And then for my yellow, I would do transparent. Nope, I would do primary yellow. Primary yellow, permanent red light, Queen of Credone red, even though it's pink, sap green. And then I would do Prussian blue, and you could mix the pink and the blue for violet. So then I would add in green gold or a black. So the cracking or breaking of colors typically happens with the colors that are on the more fugitive side. Like that would happen with Opera Rose from Winsor & Newton. So I don't actually know how these colors are going to do in the palette because this is my literally brand spanking new palette, brand spanking new, you know, getting it in my palette like this. So we'll see. But no, and it doesn't mean that the color is like damaged or unusable. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. It just means that some colors are a bit more rich and more velvety, buttery texture because they have a different blend of gum arabic, and then the pigment is different. Like it's a rock versus something, you know, not as dry. So it depends on what the actual pigment is and then the ratio of gum arabic and pigment. But yeah, it will happen probably to at least one of these colors in this palette. There's not much you can do to prevent it. You could obviously just paint with wet paint straight from the tube instead of letting it dry. But it doesn't mean that the color is unusable. So there you go. We've got all the brand new 20 of my favorite colors from my Mary Blue, the new brand that I'm using. Less toxic, also extreme vibrancy. Like there was definitely some vibrant colors from the Winsor & Newton colors that I used, but these are like really awesome vibrant colors. I'm very excited about these colors. Again, if you want to see them swatched out with all the other 90 colors from this line, make sure you go check out that video. We'll link to it. And if you want this palette or any of the supplies that I mentioned, we have that linked in the description of this video. I hope it was helpful understanding why and how I lay out my palette in the most simple, efficient way. And I'm so excited to start painting with these colors, and I can't wait for you to check them out as well.